Hello, I am Dr. Diana Tolmie from the Queensland Conservatorium, Griffith University. Welcome to the Music Livelihoods Knowledge Series 2023. This is a series of 6 sessions that invite people to join me on the journey of exploring musicians' lives. This knowledge series is also tied to the International Music Livelihood Symposium, which is held online every year. So last session, we discussed musicians' minds, beginning with the biology of our superior musical brains and how maintaining our musician activity will be of great benefit to us as we age. We also worked through the reasons musicians are predisposed to certain mental health pathologies, which further led to a discussion regarding strategies and mindsets musicians uphold to develop and maintain resilience. Furthermore, we considered the behaviours that can negatively impact our music identity or possible selves. Perfectionism, unhelpful thinking styles, and those that can positively impact, such as mindset of excellence, flipping the unhelpful thinking styles, and adopting Dr. Dan Siegel's healthy mind platter. As the brain is about 73% water and our music making gives it the equivalent of a full body workout, drinking water and minimizing alcohol are necessary habits to support neuronal health and function. In looking after our mental health, we are already on the path to a sustainable career in music. So this then begs the question, what is a sustainable career in music? So what is the definition? And so when I ask musicians how they financially and artistically sustained their career, their answers relate to the best use of one's resources, which for most people is time, energy, both physical and mental, budget, plus skills and capabilities of one's own and others. There is also mindfulness to retain some sense of balance between the mental, physical, financial, and artistic aspects of one's career in order to continue indefinitely. What I also found was that irrespective of their answers, the foundation for their decisions was financial or had financial impact. I'll explain shortly. So following a basic intranet search, I found this definition of sustainability. So sustainability is based on a simple principle. Everything that we need for our survival and well-being depends either directly or indirectly on our natural environment. Now, this one fascinated me as there are parallels to the music industry and the sustainability of our profession. That is, we are dependent on the environment that supports what we do. So to that end, what is the music industry and profession made up of? So one thinks people. So we've got musicians, arts funding, arts policy, philanthropy, venues, associations, institutions, be it major performing arts organisations or those education institutions, touring companies, journalists, media workers, media organisations. We've got back of house, front of house workers, art support workers, audience, for example. And we can see how our professional ecosystem is so deeply complex with many interrelated elements where if one of them does not function well, the knock-on effects can be quite detrimental to all involved. So we've got some big cogs in the music industry machine, such as funding and venues, and it is no surprise that even those two are interrelated. To explain, in session 6, we argue that art should be considered as the service it is that benefits society. Therefore, it should be further prioritised and financially supported in the same vein as health services. While we would like even more designated dollars, local, state and federal government arts funding does subsidise a great deal in Australia. One might say perhaps this is not as relevant for commercial pop music. For example, the artist commands a huge following, high rotation on radio, makes money from ticket sales, merchandise, and music purchase. Seems to be a viable and sustainable business and not reliant on any government support. However, the stadiums they perform in often report to the state or federal tourism minister as large sums of money are dedicated to their upkeep. To that end, even in what would seem independent of external financial support, we are operating in an ecosystem that has, without exception, highly interdependent elements where all roads lead to some form of subsidy. But the biggest element is people. To put it bluntly, no musicians equals no music. No art support workers equals no music. And no audience equals no music. So In consideration of our professional ecosystem, I would like to reveal to you the most common responses I have found in my 13 years of research on how musicians sustain their careers. As with any strategic career design, musicians can adopt many approaches at once, or change or adapt their approach over time as the external environment or their personal situation impacts their profession. So, common strategy number 1. There are those who choose to prioritize their health and or family. So we have the quote here, "I now choose very carefully what I say yes to as my family and or health commitments take priority." As one can imagine, this occurs for a number of reasons. As we mentioned in session 2, career journeys, the say yes approach can be non-sustainable over time, particularly if all opportunities have led to more opportunities, resulting in too many spinning plates. Such experiences guide one's choice to accepting work, be it on the artistic quality of the music work offered, the financial reimbursement of the work, which can also relate to the perceived security of the employment, or the quality and type of musician support workers on the project. This can be summed up with the generic musician adage that if you have 2 out of the 3 of the following criteria, you're doing okay. Good people, good music, good money. And of note, women suggested they are more likely to be more selective in their choice and type of work following these guidelines, given that they need to allocate time and energy to childcare, and that there are limited support mechanisms in place for mothers who are professional freelance artists. They unanimously say it means a decrease in income. Likewise, the form of music employment may be, over time, physically non-sustainable. So audiologist and orchestral horn musician Dr. Ian O'Brien has pioneered our understanding of what constitutes healthy oral music work environments. He also recognises that more work is to be done to ensure safe music workplaces that minimise damage to one's ear. This is still catching on across the industry sector, and in the meantime, many musicians have changed their employment accordingly. Put simply, for some, their workplace is too loud, therefore self-preservation and or injury drives musicians to other areas of the ecosystem. The same is true for musicians' physical health. Dr. Bronwyn Ackerman and her colleagues' research found 80% of musicians in Australia acknowledged they had and continued to work with injury. Musicians are now making conscious decisions about their health. Another very common musician economic focused sustainability strategy includes, I took on teaching or another occupation to provide the bread and butter of my income. That way I can follow my passion without the financial stress. At its most basic level, a portfolio career is one strategy for financial and artistic sustainability, as it is a way of ensuring at least one area of employment or arts activity provides supportive income. Teaching is very common within a musician's employment portfolio. Multiple studies point to this. Now, while it is a great way to maintain and remain within the territory of your music passion, teaching is not for everyone, and there are some who prefer stable non-music employment within their portfolio of work. The following information is from my current research on the transferable skills of Australian musicians who have dual careers in a non-music professional work environment. The topic of why they chose not to teach came up in every single interview. So some of these musicians did teach for some time, then stopped, or chose to completely avoid it, including it in their portfolio of work. The reasons they cited for not pursuing teaching included a lack of patience for it, the knowledge they would not invest the correct pedagogical study and approach needed to do it properly. That is, they had high standards of what good teaching entails. Their experience with teaching made them despise their own music making. It did not leave enough creative reserve for their own interests and found it reduced rather than fueled their passion, largely owing to their perfectionist outlook. It didn't or perceived not to satisfy their thirst for learning and therefore did not challenge their mind. And they figured they could earn the same or significantly more via another occupation and have enough passion to sustain their music interests. So they chose a different form of bread and butter, which not only provided a sustainable income, it also provided foundational funding for their music vocation. For example, it paid for album recordings, it bought the best equipment or instruments, it enabled greater mobility with flight costs, etc. So their chosen professions were largely in the building, health, IT, legal and financial sectors, and they were all excellent at both careers. So to give you another perspective, my own 2017 doctoral studies, almost a quarter stated yes to the question, my yearly income includes non-music employment. This included a large variety of non-music employment in academia, administration and management, business, engineering, health services, law, property development and real estate, education, rental investment income, IT sales, marketing, public service, language translation, librarian roles, editorial and copywriting, retail hospitality, ushering, and factory labour. So this meant almost 1 in 4 musicians was confident to work outside of the music profession and had either reskilled or transferred current skills to do so. For those interested in sustaining dual careers, I can summarise the participants' advice in my current study, and actually it's good advice for all of us regardless. So the first one, do your music training, be it formal or informal, first, because it will be harder to achieve the solid focus and training if trying to attempt a double degree. As I mentioned last session, this is also a valid point because of the way the brain develops. For musicians, the grey dense matter responsible for the network of connections in the brain we rely on is finalised in our mid-20s. Get that music degree or intense training achieved and you will have greater retention of your knowledge and skills. So the second one is choose that non-music occupation based on its flexibility and accommodation of your music employment. For example, there's no point being an obstetrician while trying to be a gigging musician. The two are incompatible. Babies arrive in the world when they want to, not after the last note of the show. Number 3, with that in mind, aim to have flexible work supervisors, bosses, and co-workers who have an understanding and a value for what you do. Your life will be that much harder if they are anything but. If that is not possible, start your own business or be in a situation where you are the boss. Number 4, it is potentially easy to spread oneself thin if adopting a perfectionist, don't half-ass anything approach to all of your work. This was a common comment from the musicians, and they adopted a strategy that prioritized the quality of their music making, full-time music and part-time non-music, or full-time non-music and part-time music, or a flexible approach to both. Either way, many recognized they were not superhuman and one needed to maintain a balance to avoid burnout. So time management, saying no, physical and mental health awareness, and taking breaks were very important to them. And finally, they all mentioned the need to have a supportive partner who understood their music passion and were willing to tolerate the requirements of the job, travel, expense, time investment, etc. So if this lifestyle has piqued your interest, it's worth quickly discussing that the rules of aligning your values with your employment still apply. For example, there were musicians who saw their music as a way for social change, and so it was no surprise they chose professions such as health, within which they achieved just that. So if you're not sure what your values are, we can look to the foundational work of Hall and Chandler, who investigated the concept of psychological success. In short, one's values can be born of either or a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, in this case titled subjective or objective career success. The most common intrinsic drivers, job satisfaction, self-awareness and identity formation, learning, adaptability, and extrinsic drivers, promotion, increasing income, rank, job retention, and job security are but some examples. In my own doctoral study, the 255 musicians that responded to the question of their employment values highlighted a mix of both. So perhaps ask yourself, what do you notice about these statistics? Perhaps what are some concerns? So for some musicians, they suggested they would have liked to tick security, but their current employment didn't offer it. Others likewise said they would like to have ticked increasing income, but the nature of their freelance and contract work meant their income was stagnant or fluctuated from year to year. Others also suggested they valued creativity in their work, and while they were satisfied for the most part with their main job, they sought further creative stimulus by the projects they enacted themselves. While a financial focus was abhorred by some, it was certainly prioritised as they grew older with more family responsibilities. In the end, all roads did point to financial security. Therefore, when musicians were asked about their sustainability strategies, financial mindfulness commonly resulted in a conscious saving strategy. I listen to my grandparents and save during the times I work a lot to cover for when I'm not. And another name for this is saving for the feast or famine work schedule, so characteristic of musicians' lives, otherwise known as the rainy day. So those musicians who adopted this approach during COVID-19 were very relieved they were able to live off their savings until the industry recovered. Generic savings advice recommends saving 10% of all income and either place in short or long-term investment, depending on your investment risk strategies and interests. The creative poverty seasons are usually during January for Australians, depending on the type of music one engages with. Most people are on holidays and the economy is generally less active. So for musicians, save up to 20% of your after-tax income to cover 1 month inactivity and future inevitable industry interruptions. As an aside, this year the government introduced a ruling that 10% superannuation on all work, contract or otherwise, must be paid into your account. There is more incentive now than before to avoid cash payments. So rather than rely on a hectic portfolio of work, some musicians in my doctoral study, and it is a theme that crops up in my ongoing research, opted for passive income to allow more choice of music activity. This included royalties for music publication, online music business sales, be it merchandise or music, non-music related passive side hustles through to dividends from shares and property investment. Some musicians are in the process of setting up an online business they are happy to nurture and develop over time in order to create passive income by the time they retire from some of the less desired elements of their portfolio of work. To that end, there is a paradox that many musicians are mindful of the business aspects of their employment, yet abhor them, often calling the self-promotion and fundraising process a necessary evil. Hence, we have common strategy number 5. I make sure all of my business aspects are up to date and commit to those. I retain my networks, social media, website postings, I create passive income streams, and I apply for grants. And hence, people decided that 4 out of 5 musicians said the business skills that they are required to support and sustain a music career are necessary. So a relevant question to ask is, what have been the positive influences on your music career sustainability? So with that in mind, let's have a look at the figures of my doctoral study. The first 3 indicate how our relationships with our music community are so reliant on our level of professionalism. It would appear that music versatility, be it in genre or instrument type, has allowed at least 2/3 of the musicians to lead sustainable careers, endorsing the often heard saying, "Jack of all trades, master of some." Of note, half have indicated government funding to be of assistance, be it directly or indirectly, to their work. Perhaps of interest was gender. This was reported by 28 participants to have positively influenced their career, 19 of whom were male. So that's 2/3 of those that chose gender. So the flip side of this is, what have been the negative influences on your music career sustainability? And it would appear the antithesis were responsible for disrupting one's career. Surveyed musicians confirmed that a number of external influences on the music industry beyond their control, such as economic, social, and technological factors, had a negative impact on their employability during their careers. The most popular was reduced arts funding, reported by more than half of the musicians. Could these have been foreseen and planned for accordingly? Possibly. More on this soon. Internal industry factors such as ageism, which was my age, that is 1 in 4 people, increased musician population, and employment specialization, which is the opposite of versatility, were reported to also have a negative influence on employability. Gender was also reported by 24 participants, 16 of whom were female, that is 2/3. So now that we're all good and depressed, let's go one step further and talk about attrition. Only for the sake of justifying the above mitigating sustainability strategies. During my doctoral research, I asked if the surveyed musicians had ever thought about leaving the profession, not did. Have you thought about leaving the profession? And over 50% said yes. It would appear the 5 most common choices reflecting the good people, good music, good money adage to some degree. Low pay and unsatisfactory co-workers are the antithesis of good pay and good people. Lack of public value or understanding of arts, entertainment, music education suggested good or like-minded people are not present. And certainly employment dissatisfaction, task-related, indicates the musical activity was not satisfactory. Considering the workload they have to juggle, burnout was of no surprise, yet still concerning that 1/3 of those musicians chose it. So far, the common strategies of musicians do mitigate this. In summary, they are selective about their work, make sure their employment aligns with their values. Passive income and savings mitigates the irregular income or shock events. A professional mindset is incorporated with the way they maintain their professional image, and versatility seems to add value to one's portfolio of work. So on to a happier conversation is the question, why do musicians stay in the profession? So as we discussed in the first session of this knowledge series, the power of one's passion and calling cannot be underestimated. Other musicians suggested that one's professional identity is so ingrained within one's personal identity, it was unimaginable to think of anything else. There was also an element of sunk cost and investment and a perceived point of no return. The years of training, the energy invested in creating, performing, composing, teaching, the parental and network support. For some, leaving this held a weight of guilt. Others suggested they would not settle for more mundane jobs and could not end up working for the man. Others simply refused to put themselves in a situation where their musical ability would be in threat of decline if their time was competing with another job. And some were more pragmatic. The time and energy to retrain at a later date was prohibitive and without the assurance of a resultant job. That said, COVID-19 and the Great Resignation meant it was also a good time to do so. Thus, many musicians will strategically ensure their psychological success, or in this case, creative needs, good people, good music, are met and enact self-initiated projects. So we move on to common strategy number 6. I make sure I'm always planning a new creative project where I work with the music I like and the people I can choose to work with. I found this more so with people who had full-time employment that did not offer much creative choice or opportunity to exploit their core artistic strengths. These projects are not necessarily well paid or even paid at all, but satisfy one's passion and maintains the motivation to continue the music profession, provided they are physically able to. So in summary, the above discussion has argued the definition of sustainability in the music profession relies on the best use and balance of one's own resources, be it the mental, physical, financial, and artistic aspects of one's career, and the environment within which we find ourselves, which is made up of the people we work with, be it directly or indirectly. Professor Ruth Bridgestock is a tireless employability researcher and wrote a fantastic article for the Australian Career Practitioner magazine titled Making It Creatively, Building Sustainable Careers in the Arts and Creative Industries. Published in 2011, it still holds a great deal of relevance and suggests specific career development sustainability strategies for emerging creatives. What I really like about this is the focus on the need to develop the skills of opportunity recognition and the skills of initiative, and also a focus on understanding one's profession within the broader context of its impacting macro environment, the ever-changing political, economical, sociocultural, technological, legal, and environmental trends. So she suggests, go in with your eyes open. Creative career decision-making should be based on realistic and up-to-date information about the world of work in the chosen field, including graduate labour market data, along with reflection or individual values, interests, career motivations, and skills. Interview people, those directly and indirectly related to your fields of interest. Ask what they do and how they manage their careers, and continue to do this throughout your career. It's a great networking opportunity and will keep you inspired. The next one is immerse yourself. While school of vocation education and university can provide valuable learning, extracurricular and elective activities such as workplaces, placement, project work, and masterclasses are essential for the development of advanced skills in industry networks and to demonstrate employability. So building on this, I would recommend keep learning to evolve and be guided by the shifts in the macro environment. That is, choose with the future in mind, not the present. Her next one is find or create a niche, and says the most successful creatives find ways to differentiate themselves and their work from the rest of the market. Emerging creatives who can demonstrate an unusual and desirable combination of skills within the arts, creative industries, and high growth fields such as science, technology, engineering, and health are able to access creative career options not open to most. The ability to speak a foreign language is also highly desirable. So when we think about this, we've got music therapy or music as therapy comes to mind. The artivism of social entrepreneurs we discussed in previous weeks. We have neuroscience, the use of AI, music making within unusual places or contexts, and so on. So this leads to her next one. Look for hidden opportunities. A very large number of emerging creators end up competing for a very small number of positions, mostly because they aren't aware or they weren't aware of the significant number of hidden creative career opportunities available. And that could be due to that tunnel career vision we talked about in earlier sessions. The hidden creative work can often be found in non-traditional sectors, so think of pub choir, and overseas. And while some of, for example, performing artists may need to travel to avail themselves of opportunities overseas, more and more digital specialists are undertaking globally networked project-based work from Australia. Much of this hidden work can be found via professional associations and via informal social contacts, such as industry mentors. So another example of this is since COVID, songwriters and composers are increasingly globally networked while remaining able to live wherever they want. So this leads to the next one. It's who you know and also who knows you. We talk about this in great detail next session, which is networking, or a more digestible way of thinking about this is making meaningful connections. And another mantra to this is be seen, be read, be heard. And then finally, the last one, every creative product needs a market. Therefore, consider your enterprise or your entrepreneurship skills. It'll help a great deal. Now, these are really good bits of advice, and certainly enacting any and all of these will help sustain your career. But again, this is largely reacting to the now rather than the future. And this is where we turn to a passion project of mine, future-proofing using foresight, where one thinks of the possible, what might happen, the plausible, could it happen, the probable, how likely is it to happen, and the preferred, what do I want to happen scenarios that can play out in one's career. The latter tends to be used more in career goal setting and planning of the person with a clear understanding of what they want to do. The first three can aid in one's awareness of how potentially adaptable they need to be in the future, and therefore are able to plan accordingly and potentially make more informed choices or decisions. This is where the megatrends come in. Dr. Stefan Hajkovic is the principal strategic foresight scientist at CSIRO and continues to update the megatrends of the future. In short, a megatrend is something that can build slowly or suddenly appear with dramatic global interest. So perhaps think of a recent event that had dramatic implications in many areas of life. And the answer to that is ChatGPT. So what we'll do is work through Stefan Hajkovic's megatrends and conceive positive, plausible, and potential music career opportunities or music-related impacts. So the first and perhaps most concerning megatrend is adapting to climate change. Weather-related hazards are becoming more frequent and more severe. So the ramifications of that is that we will need more climate-adapted venues and improvement of online virtual augmented reality experiences. The second megatrend is what we call leaner, greener, and cleaner, and innovative solutions to meet demand for the world's finite food, water, mineral, and energy resources. Renewable energy and low emissions technologies, synthetic biology, alternative proteins, and advanced recycling all allow us to operate within much tighter envelopes. And recent estimates suggest Australia is on track to generate half its electricity from renewables by 2025. So what we'll see as an impact on the music industry and profession is the live and acoustic event will see an uprising. It is carbon neutral, and they have even figured out how to harness the energy from sound. So that next chamber concert or that Tycos drumming event could be charging up your car battery. Also, music instruments will start to sound very different purely because of the recycled materials they are made of. Secondhand instrument businesses and repair shops will experience a boom. The next one is the escalating health imperative. So we have aging populations, high rates of chronic illness, and a pandemic-driven surge in mental health issues. These are driving an unsustainable growth in healthcare spending, and this spending is expected to grow faster than GDP in most OECD countries over the coming decade. So that music as therapy and music education will likely increase, which we discussed last session, the benefits of which have marked improvement on the ageing. So move over pub choir, hello hospital choir. Infectious disease risks associated with pandemics, outbreaks, and antimicrobial drug resistance will elevate into the future. This is an urgent need for innovation in the healthcare sector to find ways to do more with less. And similar to above, this one is concerning for us if innovation in online forms of music making do not improve. The fourth megatrend is geopolitical shifts, which has disrupted patterns of global trade, geopolitical tensions, and growing investment in defence. This will incur the rise of the defence band and therefore more full-time jobs for musicians. Plus, people will redirect their spending more so on experiences and consumables as they become less available. We are seeing this already post-COVID, and this bodes well for event attendance. So experiences will be in much more demand than consumables. The fifth megatrend is diving into digital. While the digital economy has been growing rapidly for some time, the pandemic fueled a boom in teleworking, telehealth, online retail, education, and entertainment. Around 40% of Australians now work remotely on a regular basis. The digital workforce is expected to increase by 79% from 2020 to 2025. To that end, there will be more employment opportunities, particularly in the field of education, but also creating together in a globally networked fashion. The sixth megatrend we have identified is increasingly autonomous. As the capabilities of artificial intelligence have surged, it has found applications across practically all industry sectors. This one is increasing concern to us for the arts, mainly because the local punter cannot tell the difference between AI and human-generated work. So it's one to watch, but mitigated by the following, which is the final megatrend, unlocking the human dimension. So issues relating to trust, transparency, and environmental and social governance are of particular importance. While Australia saw a temporary boost in public trust in institutions in 2021, this trust bubble was short-lived. Societal trust in Australia dropped below the global average yet again in 2022. One good thing we have going for music is that it is real. When performed live, it is a visceral experience with the ability to enact transformation that is unique to each person. Passion cannot be faked. The winners in the future are predicted to be the live performing arts. So, knowledge of the megatrends and possible, plausible, and potential scenario planning might not be for people who just want to see where life takes them. It is a pragmatic approach and can potentially take a little of the surprise out of one's career. On the other hand, you'll be better at recognizing opportunity for what it is when it occurs, which means possible, potential, and plausible is more likely to become a preferred reality. So this concludes the session on musician sustainability strategies. The next session's topic is meaningful music networks. Adages such as "you're only good as your last gig" hold a lot of water for the freelance musician, but in a heavily referred-based industry and profession, it is not only musical capability that enables career sustainability, it takes a strong social support, professional attitude, and professional network. This session will discuss one of the greatest career success influences, the musician network, and how musicians successfully manage these.